What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? It's Loopy here at Late Night Gaming, and we are here for the Chirrut Masterclass. And I'm joined by my friend and content creator, Woo. How you doing, buddy?
How's it going?
And Dylan Tibbits. You've won a showdown with Chirrut?
Or showdown.
All right. And then, so just going back, I remember actually my first Chirrut deck was shortly after reveal. It was a Luke Red deck, prior to that. At that time, Woo and I were both on Late Night Gaming. I transferred since, so this is a deck I've been playing a long time, as has he. Woo is probably the person on the planet that's played the most games of Star Wars Unlimited.
I believe it.
I don't know most games, probably maybe most Chirrut games. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I'm getting up there. Give me.
Yeah, I guess he's crushing every tournament in sight. So
Well, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we have the 3 most games on Chirrut in this masterclass video right now, because I've played this deck a ton too, and I think this is a good thing. But Woo has a channel. I think actually his Chirrut video is fundamental to all kinds of people that are playing this deck.
2 Chirrut videos now. There's the OG that kind of launched the channel, and then the kind of update, deeper dive that was a few weeks ago.
And I tagged you as father of Chirrut, for your name tag here. But you did actually take it to a showdown, Woo. How did that go?
Yeah, that was about a month ago. I finished second. I lost in the finals to a Boba Green there.
14-0 though. He was crushing it.
So,
yeah, I didn't drop a game until the finals.
So it's the humble guy, Matt, referencing the loss, not the 14 straight game wins, immediately prior. So it's just a matter of time. I ran this in a showdown and topped cut last week, too, and that was a best of 1, which hurt me in the end. But tell me about why you play Chirrut, though. Why don't we start with you, Dylan? What's the appeal of the deck before we get to the list?
Well, first I played Luke Green. That was the first deck I built, and then I was just getting crushed by like aggro, and I was just like, man, this sucks. So I looked up. I went to the Discord and I went through the deck building, and I was like, man, this has the most likes, the most fires. Clicked on it, watched the video, and I was like, okay, this deck runs looped. I can build this, and built it together, tested it, and it felt pretty good. Being able to just force through, it was so versatile in the way that I was able to answer cards, that being able to do what I needed to do and be able to flip a turn early, besides having Luke, I just was not dropping games to aggro as I once was with.
You agree with that, Woo?
So that's the main reason.
Versatile deck.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the appeal for me with Chirrut, is that it's not a deck that really has a ton of like favored matchups, but it also doesn't have a ton of unfavored matchups. It's kind of like a neutral spread, and someone who doesn't like to sit across his opponent and be like, oh, I guess I'm in my 10% matchup now and lose.
Yep.
That was a big appeal. And also Force Throws
Yeah,
Force Throw is so good.
Yeah.
It's just the most fun card. So
Yep, and I'm looking for someone to do the Vader Masterclass with me. That's my other deck, if you've checked out my Vader Force Ramp deck. But I am a big Force Throw person. I mean, if it's a very high payoff card, and most of my decks have it. I was actually testing set 2 with McBobber, and he got one of my other teammates was surprised I cast Force Throw out of a Kylo deck. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
it's an even cheaper Force leader than Chirrut.
Yeah, Kylo's pretty cool.
That was one of the key points in your video. You're like, this is the cheapest one, and then they're like, we're going to make one cheaper, and we're going to make it villainy. All right.
And then somehow Palpatine will return. But
yep,
we'll get to that set too. All right, let's talk about your list. This is the list you ran at one of your showdowns, Tibbits.
So I've gone to 6 showdowns. And for 6 of them, I've ran this, or for 5 of the 6, I've ran this list. One, it ran like a mix of Bazes and stuff, but this is the list that I've been using. It's done me a lot of stuff. I've dropped some games, but I feel like for my current local meta, this is the best that I have. Because there's currently not that many Sabines or Boba green, but there's a lot of Boba yellows. So I don't know. The cool thing about Chirrut, you can just tweak it ever so slightly, and it'll probably still play the same, and it will not really change how you play it against other decks. You know, and that's the cool thing. Like, you might put a card in and you'll just never see it, but you do see it. It might be good, or it might be bad.
All right, and I don't think that we have a slide for this one, but I do see, is that a Spark of Rebellion in the sideboard? What's the reasoning there?
The Spark of Rebellion is for the hard control, event heavy, like Iden Blue, Iden Red, Vader Blue, Boba Blue even, where a lot of the times you're playing threats every turn, and they're dealing with them, using cards out of their hand, and eventually they might draw 2 Super Laser Blasts, and they'll draw a Super Laser Blast and a Takedown, and they're like, well, I want this Takedown besides the Super Laser Blast, so they resource the Super Laser Blast. We get to resource 7, they Vigilance, kill something, and I have like a K2 on board plus like a Fleet Lieutenant or something. Like, I can like Fleet Lieutenant, K2 hit them for 6, and then I have 4 mana for Spark. You play Spark, you rip their last Super Laser Blast, and now they're searching for an answer. The fact that you only have 2 units is usually enough to close out any game, and that's like the only 2 units I'll have on board, and then until they deal with one, I'll play another one. And then just rinse, repeat until they're dead.
All right. And Woo, this is your list from your last video?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, do you change your list before, going to a particular tournament?
Yeah, I think even in the video I mentioned, like, I treat lists as like snapshots. I much more want to like talk about cards and why they're there, as opposed to like tell someone that this is the 60 cards they have to play at any event. It happened to be a 60 card deck that I played at an event. It probably would not be the same 60 if I was to queue this up into another showdown, because I would look at what I expected that week. Like, for instance, this week after like the UK tournaments, I expect a lot of people that are going to go to showdowns next weekend are going to look at lists that won there. Got Boba and Sabine were 50% of the meta in each of those 3 tournaments. So, like, I'd probably be looking a little more closely at what I'd want to tweak for that. But yeah, this is I think there's a core to this deck. Like, all 3 of the decks that you're going to show here have a very similar core. And there's a few things that you can mess with to like target a different matchup. There's stuff that you can say, hey, more control heavy, I'm actually going to play the K2's main deck. I'm going to maybe even throw a Force Surrender in that main deck. I'm going to trim a little on the anti-aggro stuff. But yeah, that's something you have to kind of... Once you're like comfortable with the deck and why the cards are there, you can start adapting it to yourself. Like, I wouldn't say you have to play my 60 or anything.
Yeah. And I think all of our lists are like 4 or 5 off of each other, is what they are.
Yeah.
And it's decisions. So there's probably some personal play preference in there too. Because we're not talking about it elsewhere too. You're running R2 is basically the 10th one dropped.
Yeah, I was always big on like 10th one drop for math reasons. It was Rebel Saboteur originally. I decided to go with 1 R2 because I felt like on the Chirrut flip turn, sometimes you have like forces with me and you don't have another card to play. Like, you don't have a force throw. If you happen to have like R2 in your hand that turn, like, you can play another card. That's like why I picked that. I saw Dylan played a C3PO. I think that's justifiable too. Like, sometimes it'll draw you a card.
All or 3.
It's pretty good. Like, and yeah,
there's been times it's drawn me 4 cards. I'm like,
I even think Saboteur is relevant in some matchups. Like, and I think you could say that one. Regional Governor could be a 1 drop, a 2 drop that you play.
And that's actually, I haven't done this for the other ones. This is actually the Chirrut list I ran. Now, this is a same thing. I agree 100% with Woo. I mean, you do not lock into a list. Even if I made the video of the list, I make some tweaks of it. But this was for a best of 1. I knew it was a best of 1. So I made some changes that way. And in fact, I do run 2 governors, in part because I don't run fleets, where both of you guys do, which is a completely reasonable card. I have done it. The governor isn't a rebel, but I care less about that. I guess the main other thing I do is the entrenched in Carabas, which I've found helpful into they're very versatile cards, and Karabast in particular has gotten me out of some bad situations where I've would have lost a game, but I think they're all very similar lists.
Yeah, I could imagine like a Devastator on a Chirrut, and then you just Blast it. You know, I feel like that'd be pretty good.
I've one-shot Avengers with Karabast. That is exactly one of the reasons that it's there. It's also a reason for Entrenched on the big Avengers and Devastators up in the Spaced Arena. You know, against the decks that run those, Entrenched is for their unit if they're not running Barrage. I do have my meta has a lot less blue-green control and a lot more blue-red control, and then blue Boba, you know, around my parts, and I think that Entrenched is safer there.
Oh, for sure. Overall, Mirage is killer.
All right. Chirrut himself. I mean, I remember when this card was revealed for like 5 minutes, you kind of hated it, Woo, because it's so weak seeming. Okay.
Yeah, definitely weak seeming. 3/5. Yeah, it was just like it took a little bit to like feel out how the not defeated thing played, but it played very well. Like his stat line is obviously not why we're playing him.
Right. So what he is a force trait user, which is very relevant, a rebel user. And then
also very relevant.
His side when deployed, I think, matters a lot. We'll talk about the tap ability in a second, because, I mean, you can use that to some effect. But what he does is he can't die from damage except during the regroup phase, so he can basically tank infinite damage. He can't be overwhelmed. You know, he can't be taken out with ECL, so you'll get some value out of your leader, you know, when he deploys, which is unique. And I think
no other leader does it.
And I think that, actually, I know that. I mean, I had a Luke Red deck. I think you had a Luke Red deck. I mean, eventually, Chirrut just seemed like he was a little bit better. Luke Red can be a good deck. I mean, if you stick Luke in a Chirrut deck, he'll still do fine. But I think that the deploying on 5 resources rather than 6.
So huge. Especially with the prevalence of Sabine and Boba.
It's major. Yeah.
All right, so
Luke feels way too slow against those two decks.
Like that extra turn is like the difference between 8 or 10 damage on your base.
So, as far as the other side, though, where you can give 2 health by tapping, what are you guys actually using that for in a tournament?
Chirrut's leader side?
Yes.
Like where he doesn't die? So I use him like against aggro. Like if they really want to kill him, yeah, sure. ECL steadfast into him 7. All right, I don't know. I'll buff something else. Kill your guy. He sort of has like a pseudo sentinel if they have PTSD from previous Chirrut games. Like at my locals, I'll have people who are like, I hate that card.
It's a PCSD.
And I'll do everything in my possible. Yeah. Like because like Chirrut, I'll have them live with 1 HP and they're like, oh, all right. Well, here we go again, you know? And then in order to make sure he's dead the turn he comes out, they're like swinging everything into him. And when that happens, I'm like, yeah, sure, okay. Chirrut's dead.
What about the...
With these, you know?
What about the top +2 health when he's not deployed yet? When do you use that?
It's a really nice action pass without actually passing, which is really relevant in a lot of matchups. Because, for example, you might have an A-Wing against a Sabine, and instead of hitting them for 3, you just buff the HP. Now they can't play a space unit. And if they pass, you just claim. Now you have initiative going into the next turn. You know, and every turn you get further is great in an aggro.
What about you, Will?
Yeah, like, let's not pretend it's a very good ability. It's not used very much in a game. It is most likely to use as a free pass, and then there's like some cute stuff you can do with it. Like if you have it binds all things, you can sometimes set up a unit to take what would have been lethal damage, but it gets to hang around. Then you can hit binds to heal it. And then there's like some weird stuff with
Boba
playing, with like Baze, for instance, like getting him to 7 means that something won't immediately one-shot him, and then he'll get like the grit. Yoda having 4 health, a common line for like green Sabines, just to ECL like K2 into it, but if you have initiative, you can boost it up to 6 health. so that it's at least gonna survive that turn, and then you get to like kind of see what they're gonna do before you commit your Yoda attack into something, right?
Yep.
Like it's just like cute little edges you can get with it, but mostly you're not using it very much. It's not a very good ability. But you know, when it matters, it can matter. So you got to know all the situations where you might want to like do it. So
You know, and I think that's good advice. It's not something that you should be using often.
There might be some scenarios where like you'll have a Luke out and he's a 6/7 and they have like a 2/2 and they'll swing it into it. They're most likely telegraphing, like if you're up against a blue deck, they're telegraphing they have takedown. Well, you get buff his HP, now he's a 6/7 again. Now they can't take him down. Now they have to wait till their next turn to take him down if they claim. So there's a lot of little niche things. Usually, like before I do an action, I'm like, should I tap? Okay, probably not. Okay, we hit. You know.
I would say that the couple of times it does matter big, and it's usually related to Baze or Yoda, you know, and
Yeah.
it's Yoda with a binds or something like that because he can hit back because of it. Baze has grid, obviously. Sometimes, I mean, you just want to kind of see what they're going to do with it, because if you can take him out of a kill range, you can put an upgrade on him maybe, but it's not a regular thing. I often will, after they take initiative, give their guy 2 health for a second just to be cute, but
Yeah.
you know, that's probably like 80 to 90% of the times they actually use it, you know, because it is you know, pretty niche besides. All right, Force Throw is a pretty good card in the deck. True.
Great card. It's aight.
So this is the reason that you
cold.
Yeah, this is the reason we would play Chirrut. It's why Chirrut's in red. I mean, I think that if you can consistently stick force units, which this deck can, I mean, it's very rare that I'm struggling to stick a force unit. And as somebody who plays Vader force on the other side, it's night and day different how difficult that is. But how often are you choosing yourself versus choosing them in a game when you think back at it?
Less often.
Yeah, it really depends on the matchup and whether or not me targeting myself saves 3 to 4 damage. Right? If they're playing, like, if they're literally just Sabine and think about if they've got one card in hand, sure, I'll force throw them, maybe hit a U-Wing. Right? But if it does, like, and if I can afford that, you know, 3 to 4 life, if they don't have a U-Wing or something, then it's okay, because then you're just making them have less gas. Or there'll be situations where they like wing leader Sabine, you have to force throw yourself, Luke, kill it to save 5 damage, which is 100% worth it, because that 5 damage could be the difference between their 4 causes getting through to you, or, you know, it's just damage matters in the aggro more than cards.
Yeah, against Sabine, I'd say it's way more likely you're going to target yourself than them. But most other matchups, I'd usually rather target them.
Yeah.
It's
Or the one-shot a
Sabine
leader.
because of card advantage. The whole point is to like just save base damage because your end game's going to beat them anyway. So.
Yeah. The only other time I do use it is like when they deploy their leader, like against Luke Green. Like the way that Luke Green beats us is flipping Luke's lightsaber on it, hit you for 7, give something a shield. Right. At that point, you're probably just losing. So being able to just force throw redemption or a Luke at Luke when he deploys, because they can't really play around a 1-mana event. And once you get rid of Luke, you're pretty good. Same with Han when they do their flip turn. If you're able to kill Han before they can get to that 7th resource, so you don't have to deal with a U-Wing or a unit Han Solo, that's really big.
Yeah, and I would say
There's
that
a couple other leaders.
Yep. Of the times that I target myself, and I don't like to do it either because you cost yourself another card and usually another good card. But
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that of the times I target myself, the opposing leader is the target, the overwhelming majority. I mean, I very rarely use this to kill one of their units. I mean, one-shot Boba,
for sure.
one-shot Vader is often what they are.
I've gotten to the point where I typically don't use it against Boba. If I'm going to use it against myself, it's for the fire spray usually, because I think you can beat them on the ground with your units, but you can't really beat them in in space. And like if you have to throw away a Luke to kill Boba, you might have just cost yourself the game in the long term because Luke is your finisher against them. It is what stabilizes you, and you might not draw a second one. So it's I know it's a huge power play to take out leaders for one cost, but you have to understand that even if you kill their leader, if you've given up your entire endgame to do it, it might not matter that much. So
and redemption too.
Always.
Redemption directly
redemption
answers fire sprays. So if you do it,
oh yeah,
you know, and I agree with that. I think it's
just like it's not. We don't have that much of an end game, right? We have 3 Lukes, 2 redemptions. I think that all 3 of the lists we just put up, that was the end game. Like there's nothing else really to play there. So you have to be really cautious. Like it's a tool. It's definitely a useful tool to have to like chuck a Luke at a Boba. It's relevant. It's just not. I wouldn't be like automatically doing it. Like if you got a Jedi lightsaber or even like a Forces with me or something, like you can take 2 turns to kill their Boba if you need to, or you can ignore their Boba and go face too. That's sometimes an option, but don't just like get pigeonholed into like,
yeah, it feels good.
Getting myself to kill Boba, and now, oh wait, my next turn is playing a Sabine and a wing leader, and they're playing a fire spray, and I'm just losing to that now.
Yeah.
It's like,
and I would. It might even be like 70-30 targeting them to me. I mean, if I have to guess, I haven't actually studied it or you know what, but I think it's usually an emergency measure. I mean, sometimes it's the last thing that you can do that keeps the game going, so you do it.
Yeah, I'm at 21 life, and they play a Fet's fire spray. That's my only option. I gotta throw away a Luke, or I'm just dead.
Okay. You ever cast this?
Yeah, the thing about Boba too is if they're deploying before playing cards, it's likely they're trying to set up an overwhelming barrage, right? They'll usually play something before him if they're not doing the OB on turn 4. Like if they're trying to, they'll do like a boss first, then flip him. It's way more effective. The force throw play is way more effective if they have 5 open resources when they deploy, because it probably means either steadfast or OB's coming, and you're shutting those cards down by like chucking a Luke at Boba. Whereas it's much less of a powerful play if they've already played like a boss scout.
You ever cast this without a force unit out in a competitive?
Yes. Okay. Against control.
Yep. And I think you're right.
They don't really have units anyway. So.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's I mean you I think touched on this, Dylan. I mean against aggro.
Yeah.
I mean you're mainly more likely to care about the cards less, and that's the time that you might use it to kill a Sabine with an Obi, throw it at him. I mean that's
just check it.
But the more control-y type the deck, the less I want to target myself because I want to drain their hand, which is the secondary part of the deck. I mean, sure, it is a little bit. It's just a little bit of an aggro deck. I mean, it has Sabines and A-wings, so I mean, it's got a little bit of a threat to start. But I really think that it's a mid-range deck, and it's a mid-range hand destruction deck, particularly when fully sideboarded the other way. So.
I think the magic number against any hard control deck is like 3 to 4 cards. If you can make them discard that, then they're top deck mode. And a lot of the times, if you draw like 1 K2 or 1 force throw, because like my favorite line of play is like they'll play Lieutenant Childston, make him a 5/5, and they reveal their whole hand and be like entrenched, Avenger, super laser, right? I flip Chirrut, force throw them. They discard the entrenched because they don't want their Lieutenant Childston to die. All right, I can either target and town it or forces with me, then hit their face, and then next turn, because ideally they're trying to get to their late game, and then you get them to the point where, like, I don't know how. There's been some scenarios where like I'll force throw them, and in order to get rid of their super laser blast, whatever they discard, I use to kill my K2 to make them discard their super laser blast.
I mean,
yes, that kills my K2, but I just discarded 3 cards from their hand.
Yeah, no, I have had great success into Vader Blue with Chirrut. I mean, at least with what I've done, and I don't think there's anything more satisfying than discarding the super laser blast. You know, they're ideally onto Vader's head. You know, but
the dread on their face as they see their only light leave, fantastic.
But I would say that it's happened more with not even having a force unit out them not having units
Mhm.
out. It's because I drained the rest of their hand. They had one card less, and the last one was a force throw that I cast just to defeat whatever is left in your hand. That's what this says all the time, right?
Oh yeah, 1 mana discard Avenger is pretty good.
All right. Any other Sage force throw advice, Phil?
Nah, just good card. Good card.
Good card. It will still be good. It's the reason to look at force trades. All right, Kanan. Solid card, 4/5. I mean, he heals. Do you think the
Rebel
heals?
2.
Yep, heals matter for aggro.
Yeah, comes up a lot.
All
Yeah.
right.
Especially if you still have a unit Sabine, milling 2. You can sometimes heal 3. That feels pretty good.
It's just core, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's not a fancy card. It's core though. Like it still hits for 4 against decks where the healing doesn't matter, and like yeah, it's not like the best thing against decks that the healing doesn't matter, but like there really aren't any other choices, and like it's incredibly important against
Oh, yeah.
Sabine. It's like him and Yoda. One of them's got to stick usually for you to win those matchups, because that chip heal is what keeps you alive.
Also, the milling will sometimes, if you mill a super laser or let's say like a steadfast or takedown, you don't have to play around it as much.
Yeah, certainly. And remember, I mean, I think you brought it up. I mean, Sabine is a Spectre, so if she's out, he actually mills 2, not 1.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't remember that. Don't cut Kanan. I mean, I've seen Chirrut lists that are doing. I mean, I like K2. I like Baze. I like the forces with me. We're heavy in 4-cost cards, right? So you kind of can't run them all, but I do not think that you cut Kanan.
Also, it being a 4/5 is very important. Doesn't die to boss. Doesn't die to a bunch of other stuff that has ambush. So,
Callus.
Yeah.
All right, Luke Skywalker.
best card in the game. Better than Vader. Fight me.
There you go. I think that's the. I think it's the number, 1 and 2 high impact 7 costs. I would put Vader above it, but this is a primary win condition. If you're throwing Luke's and they're throwing Vader's, actually, I think Luke tends to win that. I mean,
yeah, he can. Yeah, card's good. It's a finisher. It's like built-in removal.
The fact that it enters and kills so many things, there's so many relevant Fet's Fire Spray, or a Palpatine after it kills something, or to finish off a leader after they killed one of your units. It's just so huge. The -6/-6. It pretty much kills anything you'd ever want. They can Avenger, and if you have 2 space units, play Luke, finish off the Avenger for free.
Yep. Luke the Devastator and then open fire it. I mean, I've done that for sure. Great card. I think it's the strongest win condition in the deck. I mean, I try not to resource him if I can at all help it. I mean, turn 1, you probably have to. But if you get a
if I draw 3 after I mull, I gotta resource at least 1 or 2.
Right. Because he's kind of like an automatic 2-for-1, right? Because he'll usually kill something coming in. And then they're usually not going to be able to kill him before he can attack. I mean, Vanquish is the only thing that gets him cleanly, unless Power of the Dark Side hits. So, I think that's a very key card. It's one of the reasons to run the deck. Either of you guys tried to run Mace and Chirrut?
I think I tried it at
before they
first.
revealed Luke.
I tried,
or was that the church get revealed after Luke? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I tried a 1 of.
I don't think Mace is a good card personally.
Yeah.
I know some people have said that it seems good. It's a more aggressive. It can go face the first turn. I don't know. Of all the 7s, he seems pretty low impact to me personally.
Yeah, and I just say that because I've seen it. There's a lot of Maces going around with good players because it's the, showdown win. But I think if you have access to both of them, I mean, I certainly wouldn't cut a Luke for a Mace.
It's a cheaper card, so if you need a finisher there that you don't have Luke, it can serve that purpose. But I don't even know if I'd play him instead of just playing more aggro or something. And
third Redemption. Redemption, I think, plays very well and answers some things that you need. If Mace
Oh,
was
yeah.
a space unit, I'd be more inclined to play him at what he is. All right, Yoda. This is a key card you're looking for when you're mulliganing and trying to set up your hand. Yes.
Best turn 2 play.
Yeah, I was about to say best 2/2. So good against control because it replaces itself. So good against aggro. Can upgrade it. Forces with me. Chip healing. Has a decent stat. 2/4. You know. Trades into most 2-drops like Viper Probe Droid or any of the 3/2. Pretty good.
And of course,
I think you need to realize this, at least the list that I was running has 9 3-drops in the deck, but 6 of them rely, or actually I think I had 8 because I was playing 2 wing leaders, but the rest of them, Fleet Lieutenants and wing leaders, rely on your turn 1 play to be in play for them to be useful. If you're playing against a deck that removes your turn 1 play, they're kind of anemic cards. Yoda's like the safest thing to have in your hand because you know your turn 2 play is going to be good. It might not have as much upside as like a wing into wing leader and they don't have an answer and you just like bash them for 10 over 2 turns. Like,
Yep.
Or like Fleet Lieutenant might sometimes be a better play because it's going to keep initiative likely for you into the following turn. But Yoda doesn't rely on anything around him to be a safe play. And he's got both halves, right? The restore is good against aggro, that when defeated is good against control decks where you are going to more likely need that attrition, that card draw. Cheapest force unit in the game too, so like sets up a forces with me on the following turn if he sticks.
Can be strong to upgrade too. I mean, if you get we were talking about this before. I mean, sometimes on particularly Sabine Green, because she can ECL in a K2 to kill Yoda. I mean, that's a play that she has available to her.
I'm perfectly fine with that, personally, because, you know, Yoda eats the 4 damage. Because usually when they're doing that, they're trying to get some chip damage in with Overwhelm. And if Yoda eats that all, you know, K2, they paid 4 mana to deal 3 to my base. All right, sure. That's fine. To me, at least.
I think so, too.
Excuse my yawn.
And also, I mean, keep track of initiative. I mean, if you play Yoda turn 2, I mean, against an aggro type deck, even if I have an A-Wing out that's representing 3 damage, I mean, a lot of times my line of play will be play Yoda and then claim before she can get initiative if I'm holding a Saber or an Entrenched. Because I know if I can get that on Yoda, that's the end of the game. Just watch out for Traitorous.
Oh, yeah. And always trade units. That's big into... Like, I probably don't hit the base until, like, resource 6 or 7. And, like, nothing's on the board against aggro. Like, I don't even bother looking at base unless they have the initiative. And then I'll just do all my action.
We're certainly the control in that matchup.
Yeah.
All right, open fire. You have 3 of this in your deck, Dylan?
Yeah, it's just too good against aggro. Kills pretty much kills K2, kills Fighters for Freedom, kills, you know, Battlefield Marine, kills an A-Wing, you know. Them getting an A-Wing into Wing Leader is just brutal. We're playing a 25 health base. So, all right. You know, like if you can play turn 2 or turn 1 play and then open fire whatever they play, probably golden. Like you're probably like your chances of winning just go up from there.
Yeah, Sabine has the same issue with needing her turn 1 play for a lot of her units. All right. I can tell I probably devoted like 30, 40 games of trying to mess around with going to less open fires because it's not great in every matchup, but I think you need 3 mid deck. I mean, you can take them out.
It ends up being one of the cards I cut post sideboard for like a vanquish. Like I'll trim 1 for a vanquish and trim something else. It's like one of the first cards I look to cut into other matchups.
I agree with that. I do the same thing. All right, Obi. How does he play? What matchups do you want, Obi? What matchups do you not? Let me start with wooooo.
Yeah.
He's okay. I don't think he's fantastic really anywhere, but he just like kind of fills a gap. I think he's gone down in value a little bit with the rise of Boba Yellow. I think that card it usually reads 6 lose the game when you play it against Boba Yellow. So in that case, yeah, it's not great. It's got Sentinel, but it's really not a card I play against Sabine very often. I'd much rather be playing like Vigilance in that place. But he's not really bad in most places either. And that's like kind of why he's a main deck card. He just fills a gap in the curve. It is a little bit of incidental card draw, which matters in some matchups because the deck, other than Yoda, relies on the top of its deck very much. It doesn't have much fuel sometimes. And like sometimes just like Chirrut next turn Obi is like is gonna do things into some decks. But yeah, like I look to cut it sometimes in matchups, particularly Boba yellow, but also like control decks, like the hard control decks. Like he's not enough of a threat to like it's too slow. Like you can play multiple units that deal as much damage as him sometimes on the same turn. So I don't think he's core as much as he is just like acceptable. And if someone wanted to try to play the deck without him completely, I think that's justifiable. I don't think.
I think I actually did put him in the sideboard for the one, showdown because I thought Boba yellow would be the most representative deck, and I was right. I played 3 of them, in Swiss, and then Sabine yellow is the second one. He's not great there. I mean, I think the only matchup I really, really like him is Luke Green, because I think he can do some stuff, there and kind of.
Also, I like it against Vader, like
yes.
the unit Vader bounces right. It's a clean bounce. He has 6 health. Vader hits for 5. As long as they don't ramp and they're a turn ahead of you, and they have the initiative going into Resource 7. If you're able to get a Obi out.
Yeah, as I play a lot of Vader Green, I agree with that. Particularly as a Vader Green. I don't know about Vader Blue because they have all the removal, but
they also don't play the Vader unit in Vader Blue.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Vader unit. But I was thought, the Vader as Vader Green, I really don't like seeing Obi. That is true. Although I might try to force throw him.
Yeah, it's like decent into like the Krennic Green and Iden Green.
All right, Wing Leader. I mean, I think it's a card that plays right now. I have it. It's one that's not good in every matchup. Why don't we start with you, Dylan? When do you want to keep your Wing Leaders in? When are you looking to move them?
Man, sometimes you'll see a Wing Leader, like you'll have a Wing Leader, and you're like, man, if this works, this feels good. But a lot of the times, they kill whatever your turn 1 play is, like we said earlier, and you just have a 2/1 Wing Leader that can't really buff anything, and you're just like, well, okay, you play it against like a hard control because it's just a body, so it's up a power of the dark side. It's one of my favorite cards. Like I'll hold on to them, and like after they super laser blast, like I'll play a Kanan plus Wing Leader, and then pass. Right, plays around Avenger, plays around Power of the Dark Side, plays around. It's just really nice at filling the board, but also being a cheap body to just sack to something. It's probably one of my favorite cards against control, but against aggro, I'm not really looking to play it.
Your thoughts, Boo?
Yeah, I've spoken on Wing Leader a bunch, but it's definitely the card. I cut it from the deck against aggro. You never have time for that stuff. It's part of a critical mass of upgrades for Chirrut. So like this Forces main Jedi lightsaber are the package of upgrades, and like getting him to become relevant unit is important. And it is part of the most aggressive starts we can have against decks where we are the aggro. So yeah, like against villain blue, it's an important, like one of the best cards against those decks because it like soaks up the power of the dark side stuff. Like Dylan was saying, it just needs, it's like it provides a buffer. It's good. I think it's decent into Boba Green too, because some of the games that you can steal from them are games where your first 2 turns are very aggressive, usually like Wing Leader or Sabine Wing Leader. You force them to have to play defense against you for the first few turns because they're always going to become the aggro once they flip because they're going to delete your entire board. But if they haven't been able to push any damage on you the first few turns because they're cleaning up your Wing Leader mess, your life buffer might be big enough for you to like go into your deploy turn and kind of regain that advantage that they got from their flip turn. So it's a core card, I think. It's just really bad against aggro. So,
and I'll say something else. Like if you wing leader an A-wing and their only answer is takedown, and they take down your A-wing, you're perfectly fine with that, because that's one less takedown against Chirrut.
And they took 5.
Yeah, it's like I'm like cool. That's
and you got a hit if you did a turn, because they can't cast takedown.
Exactly, like they have, like you're getting the 5 immediately, and then they spend their whole turn 3 takedown, and you get to deploy like a K2 into their board. Like that, you're so
cooking.
far ahead at that point
cooking.
because they have to answer K2, and then you get a free Chirrut flip. And don't be so scared of waylay either. It's really not the end of the world if like a Boba waylays you turn 2.
Yeah.
It means they're not ramping. It's
you flip when they flip,
and you still have a unit in play. Like you still have a wing leader in play.
And I
against Boba yellow, different. They have 9 ways to ruin your day. So it's a little different against them. But the green version, certainly I think wing leader is a decent card there.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the few cards where I make a difference between group Sabine green and yellow, too, just because of all the space in Sabine yellow. I mean, actually, I'm really trying to find a wing leader or forces with me to get on like a restored arc, up in the space arena to try to clip that up.
I get it. I don't think that's where I would land personally. I still think turn 2, like I need to either open fire something or I need to like Yoda and like establish. I think it's tough to. I think it might be a little tough to like just go into like the wing leader, especially if it's an A-wing. Restored arc makes a little more sense because it does hit for 4 on defense, which means the Falcon won't be able to just clean it up. But like a Falcon can still attack into an A-wing that's buffed up by a wing leader. So like you kill that, you wing leader your A-wing, their A-wing hits you, and then you like kill their A-wing, and then their Falcon comes out.
Yeah, and obviously,
well, actually that wouldn't work because A-wing has too much health.
Yeah, you're and to be clear, you're looking for open fire in Yoda and hopefully like a saber against Sabine. But restored arc and wing leader, I don't take the wing leaders out on the sideboard against yellow, whereas I do against green.
I think that's
perfectly fine.
Fair.
I think when we do lose those matchups, it's 2 space.
Yeah, and
because we just have overwhelming ground.
And it's the forces with me as much as anything, but the forces with me on one of the spaceships into theirs, particularly if you have a force unit out. I mean, if you can secure the space arena, I feel against yellow, you're going to do a lot, better. Whereas green isn't as strong up there.
I think it's worth looking at keeping wing leaders in.
All right, redemption. I've seen Chirrut decks without this. I mean, why is this in the deck? How does it play?
Oh man. So imagine your opponent, they swing 8 damage or they pump the biggest overwhelming barrage into Chirrut. You swing Chirrut in, they do some other actions, and then you play redemption and you heal Chirrut to where he has 1 health. You go to next turn. Now Chirrut gets to swing again. Yeah, it's pretty big, but there's a lot of times where like this just blocks the Fet's Fire Spray and you heal yourself for 8. Very nice. Healing 8 against any Sabine deck pushes you out of like 4 cause or any like K2 shenanigans with. It's just, I don't know. The heal is very important, especially that instead of it just being like base heal, that you can also heal units. You can push a lot of value with it.
What units do you heal? Chirrut?
Mainly Chirrut. Or like if I have like a 1 damage on Obi, like I might heal the 1 damage on Obi if Chirrut's full. But if I'm in that situation, I'm probably winning anyways.
What about Fire Spray?
Yeah, it blocks them, right? It's an important card to like just have access to.
Yeah, I'll notice some people like they might play it and then like they'll heal 2 from base, so it's or heal 3 from base, so it's a 6/6. That way it doesn't die to Fet's Fire Spray. Personally, just heal 8, right? Or if they like have a Cartel Spacer plus Fet's Fire Spray, heal them down to a 6/3. Because if you play it as a 6/9 and then it gets waylaid, you're so sad because you didn't get to heal that 8 when you should have. And then they hit you for 5, and then now you're closer to death.
All right. What about you, Will? Tips on redemption use?
I like. It is just a nice thing to have in your back pocket. It is another thing that you can throw at leaders. It's it can lock up a space arena. It basically ends the game against Sabine. Like, I know it costs 8, but that can get to that point against Sabine. And it does immediately end the game there. It is not amazing. It's just a good card. You need some chunky things in the deck. It is a pretty lean deck overall. Like we said, it's just 3 Lukes and 2 Redemptions is really the entire like upper end of this deck. It's a little thin, and I think without Redemptions it would be a little too thin. So
Yep.
yeah, it's solid. Like I don't use it that much to like heal units typically. Like there is some like upside occasionally with that. I think usually by the time I play this, Chirrut's already dead, because if Chirrut's not already dead when I'm playing this, then they're dead. So
fair.
But it is like, it's the aftermath thing. Like there's nothing really cleanly. Sometimes you just like the board is empty, then the super laser blast and just play a 6/9, and like if they don't have Vanquish, it's just like gonna bump their face.
I will say, if they super laser, I'm probably not, like, if I can play something else other than Redemption, like I'd much rather Wing Leader.
If you play a couple units, it's usually better, but you know.
Yeah, and you don't automatically.
Oh, one shots Vader. It does one shot Vader, which is like different than some of the other cards.
And you
against Vader green, I will typically hold on to this card in my hand. But
you know, I hold on to this against Vader. I hold on to this against Boba. I hold on to this.
It doesn't feel bad to throw this at a Vader. I think, like, as much as I talked about how I don't usually want to force throw things at Boba if I can help it, like, I'm pretty cool one-shotting the Darth Vader. It's like, I feel like that kind of falls apart if they flip and instantly lose their leader.
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about Vader leader there as opposed to Vader unit.
Vader green, yeah, like the Vader leader.
Yeah, it's like, I've actually also, you know, I've played this, you know, after there, and then a Carabast actually can work with this too, you know, which is one of the more hilarious ways to kill an Avenger, you know, with 10 mana. But good card. Don't automatically heal is the other thing I would say. I mean, if you don't actually need the heal, sometimes the health up in the space arena, particularly if they have a bunch of removal.
Like make it a 6/6. Like if it's just a unit, just to play around takedown.
Right.
Perfectly fine.
And certainly
think about math. There's like different thresholds. Like even 6/6 might not, like if they are playing Boba Fett and you've seen shoot first and fire spray, right? Like 6/6. Maybe you want 6/7. Like how much do you need to heal? Like if you're gonna go, how much? Like you have to think about different breakpoints and like what you're playing around and like how important the amount of heal that you're gonna get is. And like if you're at 12, like you need to heal 8, or would you rather just be insulated from like a fire spray blowing you out?
I mean you're
like a shoot first. So.
You're playing against like a blue Iden or a blue green Iden. You know, a lot of times you just don't actually need the heal. I mean, if you have like 8 damage on your base, you know, and you're secure, you might want to keep the damage here. Watch out for 3, leaving it with 3 or less. I mean, sometimes I think I take all the heal, but Vigilance is rough if you drop it too low too.
Yeah, I think if you're at 3, you might as well just heal the extra 2.
Force is with me. You know, I think this is a very good card. Notably, I mean, it's if you control a Force unit, you give a shield token to the thing that attacked. You don't need to attack with the Force unit, which I think is very important in the Sabine yellow matchup. I mean, a lot of times that's exactly what I'm trying to do to get the space cleaner, because like crushing a Falcon with a Restored Arc or even a Wing Leader, I've done that before.
It's also playable when you don't have a Force unit.
Yeah.
Your Restored Arc still kills a Falcon if it without a shield and survives, right? So it's not.
I've personally done this on a Fleet Lieutenant to kill like Sabine leader instead of like takedown. So now I have a 5/3 after killing Sabine.
Also late game just for lethal. I mean, it doesn't matter what your last unit is. If you need 2 more damage, just cast it and end the game with Force or with me rather than thinking about it. I think I've seen games where people miss that.
I think it's more often like they have 16 health left and you play this on the Luke and you deal 8 and now your Luke has a shield and they can't possibly kill it and you just take initiative and then hit him again, right? Like the shield means that your unit's almost certainly going to get a second attack if you just go, if you don't trade with it, if you just go face and they have to like trade 4 units into like multiple units to kill it, right? the shield's pretty big. The action sheet is really big. This is a big payoff card. This is like
I
a big,
personally think it's better than Saber in most situations.
Certainly different.
yeah.
A lot of time with turret too. I mean, you're very rarely casting something that costs 5 on the turret flip. You agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know there's a 5 cost in the deck.
There is not.
So
by rarely you mean never, right?
right, but like forces with me and force throw is great.
Yeah.
It's a power play. That's
Buffs Chirrut, gets him out of takedown, trades with something, then you force throw, kill something.
Whereas if your buffs is a wing leader, I mean, sometimes I find myself like keeping a Sabine just to make that turn efficient, rather to have it suck because you need something that costs 2. But I think it's a good idea to kind of think about what your turret flip turn is going to be ahead of time.
Yoda into forces with me is a very strong play against a lot of decks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or even like K2, that like being able to overwhelm for an extra 2.
Yeah, now we get a little
super good.
We'll talk about that with K2 because that's, I think, a reason for there. All right, everybody's running Vigilance now, despite out of aspect, right?
It's good against any aggro. Good. Against any aggro deck, you play one of these. The heal 5 is so important. Being able to just, it's like you're healing 8 because you're defeating a 2-drop that deals 3 in most situations, and you heal 5. So it's like you're healing 8 damage. It's huge. I like the card. I tend to end up cutting it post sideboard, like against like Krennic Green or Han Green or any of the heavy event control decks. Vigilance is probably one of the first cards to cut. But against aggro, it's a nice card to have in my deck.
Right. And
core into Sabine, passable into Boba, cut most other places.
Yeah.
There's like some. I mean, I can't off the top of my head think of every single deck, but yeah, that's like the general just like.
Yeah, I think
it's a good bridge, right? It's a good bridge. Like it's like delay a turn of damage, kill a little thing, go to loot next turn.
Yeah, and most often you're using defeat a unit and heal 5. I would say
most often.
I mean, I play other decks with Vigilance where I'm a little bit more. Sometimes I'm using the shield. I've had a couple of amusing games where I've milled a control deck just for lack of anything else to do, which actually turned out well, but I don't typically keep it in under afterboard. I mean, it's just because I have the Vigilance as main deck to deal with aggro.
Yep.
I would say it's more important against Boba yellow than green.
Oh, for sure, because you know they run like Swoop Racer, which is a 4/3, 7th fleet. You know, so many 3 health themes that this answers just cleanly.
All right. Now, I don't think that this card is necessarily core to the deck. I mean, you can run Chirrut without Vigilance. It's still okay. If you have Vigilance, it's going to make your deck better, particularly against aggro. All right, Fang Fighter.
I will say that without, if you're playing against like seasoned Sabine players, I think you need to make a lot of concessions for the matchup.
Right.
And it is one of the concessions you need to make. I think you will be heavily unfavored into Sabine without Vigilance in your deck.
If you're not running Vigilance, you should be doing something else to help the aggro matchup. I mean, the one card, that I think Devotion comes to mind as something that's possible, to try to help there. But Vigilance is better if you can find the card.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Fang Fighters, at least I think Woo and I were main decking this, which is kind of there. I mean, I think that Red has the access to defeating an upgrade where a lot of other things don't. What's the reasoning to running the Fangs right now?
Entrench is a popular removal card in hard control decks. It's really why this card is in the deck. There's incidental other situations where it's okay in like mirror matches, and if you see someone play Traitors, but mostly this card is here to stop Entrench from ending your life.
I agree with that entirely. That's what it is, entrenched and traitorous. Also, I guess if they're running like a Vader where they have a bunch of sabers, I mean, it comes in there. And the mirror. You should play it in the mirror, I think.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Force Surrender. We talked a little bit about mode 2 of the deck. I mean, so Chirrut, kind of as all of our main decks have it, constituted as a very mid-rangey, type deck. But it has 3 different cards that can do hand destruction. being Force Throw, K2 and Force Surrender. When are you actually pulling in the Force Surrenders? When we go woo?
Only against blue villain, personally, is when I bring them in. Blue villain control decks, whether the soft control decks like Krennic, Iden, and Palpatine green, or the really hard control decks like the mono blue or the blue red decks. That's where I bring in Force Surrender.
Yeah, and I think that finding this card against the latter of those, the hard control, is very directly related to winning.
Oh yeah.
All right.
It's why all three are in the 60.
Right.
I think it's too important to draw one copy of it to stand a chance in those matchups, because it doesn't matter if they have 5 or 1 card. If they have 1 card in their hand, it's a Super Laser Blast. So like it needs to be 0. You need to get their hand to 0, because the last card will be the one that ends your life. So there's a certain amount of math involved in how many cards you need to rip from their hand, and this is the closer. This is how you get them to 0.
And don't be afraid to ask people how many cards they are in their hand. If you're at a tournament and you're not able to see how many cards are in their hand, just ask. I mean,
I'll do it without even having a Force Throw or Force. I'm like, how many cards do you have in hand? And they're like, 2. And I'm like, okay. I don't even play any like discard stuff.
I'll sometimes do it to bluff Force Throw.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's good.
I've done that too, where like they'll kill my Chirrut. I'll play a Kanan and I have 1 mana open, and then I'll say pass. I can't do anything, but then they're like flame, so then I just delayed their leader a turn.
But I think the game plan against any deck like a Vader blue or a blue Boba or Iden blue, I mean, you really need to get them into top deck mode. I mean, or you're going to have a bad day. And then hope they don't.
Because more often than not, they're going to top deck bad than good, and then they need to top deck good multiple times in a row.
It's part of the entire package: Force Throw, K2, and Force Surrender. It's 9 cards. At this card, typically they're not drawing cards, which they really don't outside of I Am Your Father and you letting them draw cards. If this is your plan, don't let them draw cards. 4 cards. 4 cards is the magic number. You need to rip 4 out of their hand typically to get them to 0. So 1 of each.
Yep.
1 Force Throw, 1 K2, 1 Force Surrender will do it usually. So.
And this can also draw you into other force discard stuff. So
right, and don't give them cards on I Am Your Father. I mean, I don't think there's anything in the deck that's worth doing that.
Like let them deal 7 to Chirrut.
There are fringe situations where you let them do it. Like if you are just the absolute aggroist of starts and you think you can kill them before they get to 8. You can do that, but typically no. You're just letting them kill a unit. You don't have that many high value units anyway. That like where it's like some giant blowout. It's just an open fire usually. Just let them kill one of your units.
Right. All right, Baze. I think that this card significantly improved my games. My wife plays Sabine Green primarily, and I think it's very good there. I think this is your best friend, so I'll let you have the floor with Baze. Woo. What are we doing here?
Yeah, so like I've been playing Chirrut testing. I was doing it for months, and like there was a period between my first video and like a month after where like it felt close but not quite there in terms of like matching up with Sabine and Boba. And I was looking really deep into the card pool. This is not a card typically considered very much. I don't think it's a particularly good card, actually. Like when you read it, it's not very strong. It just fits a very specific role right now against those 2 matchups.
Yep.
I play against some really tough Sabine pilots, and I needed help, and this helps. It's just the math works for him in that matchup. The 5 health means that the K2 ambush, for instance, out of green does not get through it. Nothing really that they do outside of like a Fleet Lieutenant play will usually one-shot it on turn 3, right? Like it's not like they can steadfast. This is a 4-drop. So if you're able to play this and it doesn't get one-shot, it means that they have to spend a lot of energy. The second unit that attacks it will usually die because of the grit. And it's just there to annoy them a little bit so that you can go into your next turn and like not have taken 8 damage on their flip turn. And
I got to it a different way. I had it in Inquisitor first, not in this deck. But I think we were around the same time that it was actually popping up. I just think it's really good it's great into Sabine, and it's good into Boba. Boba's got some things. If they got to shoot first, it sucks.
The math works pretty well in the Boba too, because first of all, the boss is their biggest flip enabler. It doesn't work here. Boba himself doesn't kill it. So it usually means Steadfast needs to come in. And that's a trade that we are happy with because they lose their ECL. We lose our Tarkin Town to clean up the Steadfast. And we're kind of good. We just made their flip turn not demolish us. And it's the same thing with the grit stuff. Like if they have to spend 2 units into it, it means that they their flip turn became weaker. They probably lost a unit. If they want to pass and like not kill it, we're good with that too, right? We'll usually have initiative going into our next turn because we're playing 1 card, Baze, and then we're claiming. And if you have initiative and he still has Sentinel, then he's going to protect your next turn too, right? Yep. And you can do weird things like Forces with Me on him to give him a shield.
Well, yeah, not only that, Forces with him to give him a shield, and then now the grit's more important. Say they ran the Sabine into it, and he'll have 2 damage on him. He's hitting for 4. I mean, if you put a Jedi Saber on him, I've done that too. On that, all of a sudden he's hitting for 7 into Sabine.
There's like a lot of weird stuff that works with him, but primarily it's turn 3. It's just to mess with their turn 3. I think much more important into Boba Green than Boba Yellow because they're ramping, right? The whole idea is that he's making their flip turn a little worse. It's not so relevant in the Boba Yellow deck because they're not playing their 5 drops that turn. And against Sabine, right, she's flipping before us. So this is, again, it's just to make their flip turn a little less obnoxious for us so that we can live to fight another day. And that's really it. Like, I think if you're expecting a lot of Boba and Sabine, I'd recommend jamming a couple of these in your deck. It makes your control matchup worse because he's absolutely abysmal into control. Is like nothing you want to you do not want to play a 2-power unit into a control deck. And there's like a bunch of places where you can cut him. Like he's not great into Boba Yellow either because, again, like what I was saying, like it doesn't line up as cleanly into their matchup because you're not trying to. They have, like, again, all the bounce, right? He's a pretty awkward card to get bounced. All right, yeah, that's what I got.
All right. Finally, you can open fire your Baze, do 6 damage. I've done that after they've claimed, which was hilarious. Anyway, so if Baze comes out, I think this is who goes in. Pretty much. I don't think I play any games after sideboard without 3 of one or the other. I mean, because I think that it's one way or the other.
I don't have the 3rd Baze in the 60, but I do have all 3 K2s because it's the best. It's like one of the core pieces into beating all the control decks. So. Right.
And how often are you using the damage for K2 as opposed to the discard?
If they have 3 cards in hand and they spend 1 to deal with K2, and I have a Force Surrender in hand, I will deal 3 to base, then play Force Surrender. Right. That way, I'm pushing damage while also enabling Force Surrender. Like that's the scenario that I would do damage. Or if I have like multiple K2s in hand and I'm pushing damage and we're getting to the 20 range, 24, 25, I might deal 3, play another K2. Right now they can't Avenger or Super Laser or kill it. Just push that damage. If it's getting to that point, that's when I'll do damage.
But the primary mode against control, which is when you should be playing him, is typically discard. No.
Oh, yeah. If turn 4 they kill it, all right, discard a card. Turn 5, all right, play another one, discard a card.
Yeah, you'll have to look at it a case by case. But yeah, it is more likely you're using it for discard. It's kind of why it's there. It's to fill out that entire package. But yeah, like there's times you want damage, right? Like you're racing them, you're like, it's hard to like give you a complete blueprint. You have to look at what's happening in the game. And
yeah, is he more than 20 damage? All right, deal 3, most likely. Is he less than 10? All right, discard a card.
And I think that's right. And also, he does have Overwhelm. I mean, I think you touched on this. I mean, it's
Forces with me. a lot of times, having a 6/6 overwhelm, right? Instead of buffing Chirrut, I'll sometimes buff K2SO control. If they want to kill Chirrut badly enough, go for it. Here's a 6/6 hitting you.
Yeah, if they're Chots and they're only a 5/5, if they didn't get the magic 6 and you get to smash a K2, leave behind a 6/1 with forces with me, that's gonna really be a problem for them.
All right.
Yeah, hurts.
So good stuff, guys. Let's go into the matchups. Into an aggro matchup, what's your general game plan? Why don't we start with you, Dylan?
Survive.
Sabine Green.
Sabine Green. So if I have the initiative and I have A-Wing and Sabine, I'm playing A-Wing first because it's a lot harder to deal with their space unit. But if Sabine is my only 2-drop, I will play basically, if you have initiative and a 2-drop, you play it. But if they have the initiative and you have a 2-drop, and you have a removal spell like Open Fire, you claim, deal with their stuff. Or if you want to go for the upside play, if you're able to match their arena, do that. Right? A lot of the times if they play Battlefield Marine and I have A-Wing or Sabine, I'll just play Sabine. Sure, they can kill Sabine, but that's 3 damage not going to my face. I'll Tarkin Town it. It's not the worst. Basically, every turn we survive is good. And every time we trade units is less damage going at face. You can pretty much use that for any aggro.
I think that's right. You do the same thing with Open Fire, Woo, if they have initiative.
So if they lead A-Wing, and I have an Open Fire and my only play would be like an A-Wing myself, I'd very much consider just claiming. I don't love the claim first all the time because I feel like the A-Wing and I have a Sabine. I think I just play the Sabine because, yeah, I'm going to take damage from the A-Wing, but the Sabine is going to keep me from taking damage from something later in the game on the ground. And I think if I just skip my turn, not only am I getting pinged now because they're going to ping when you claim. So you've taken 1 free damage, something that wouldn't have happened if you had played a unit. They would have claimed themselves. You're also setting yourself up into a situation. Okay, well, you answer their turn 1 play. Now they play a 3/4. Okay, now we have initiative. Now, do we have to now immediately take down this thing? What are we playing on our 4 resource turn now? If it's Kanan, that could be good. If it's not Kanan, though, it could be a problem. They're going to have a really big flip turn.
Yep.
Is mainly the problem with the claim turn 1 play. You're kind of just conceding the fact that their flip turn is going to be massive. If it involves a Sabine into a wing leader, it's going to be a big problem. So I will try usually to just play out my unit and hope that
it doesn't get wing leadered. I'd much rather get fleet lieutenanted than wing leadered.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because then at least the Sabine can kill the fleet lieutenant or something.
And then
right?
now you have open fire.
And even if you jam your restored arc into their A-Wing, it means they're probably going to kill it, and then you can Tarkin Town. I know we've used Tarkin Town now, they're going to get a big ambush turn, but you're going to save damage that way. And if that's their sequence, right? If they go A-Wing, you go A-Wing. They claim. They have to claim, right? Now they kill your A-Wing. They can't even fleet lieutenant, right? They can't, or wing leader, because if they do either of those things, you're gonna get a good trade there. So they're gonna attack their A-Wing into yours. You're gonna Tarkin Town it. You're gonna drop a Yoda, and you might be okay. In fact, I'd probably drop the Yoda and then wait for the Tarkin Town the following turn.
I was just gonna, and I think it matters to me too whether I have Yoda. Because if I have wing leader and Yoda, first off, I'm feeling pretty good. If I can have, if I can have an opening hand against aggro, it's Yoda, open fire, and Baze. Because I think that's going to be a win. And then ideally, I guess a Jedi saber, on top of that. But
if you do have, in your scenario, you did have an open fire in your hand on the first turn. So why not just play your A-Wing? They attack your A-Wing, you Tarkin Town. They play their 3-drop, you open fire it. The board is clean now going into the flip turn. That's not terrible. You've lost your Tarkin Town, but that's okay, especially because we're not playing Yoda at this point. We're not at risk of the like K2 ambush Yoda. Now we don't have the target town. We can play like our K2 or our Baze, which can't get one shot by the K2 ambush. And then even if they have a big flip turn, we might be able to rebound from that because we haven't taken any damage yet this game.
Which is huge. If you're turn 5 or 6 and you have less than 10 damage, you're cooking. That's good.
And I'm certainly bringing in my vigilance. The third one comes in against it. The force surrender goes out.
Oh yeah.
If you're playing force surrender main deck, you're definitely cutting that.
Yeah, and I do play one force surrender, main deck in large part because a lot of my locals are best of ones, and I want to have a chance, against if somebody brings a Vader blue. What about Sabine yellow? How do you change? I mean, I personally find ECL Sabine harder for Chirrut than yellow. Just because it's punching.
I agree with that. Because it's so much easier to stick a restore unit into yellow Sabine than it is into the ambush. Like, we say we're okay with the trade with the Yoda, but I'd much rather just have Yoda in play, right? Like,
oh, for sure.
Right.
So it's just a much safer play. Kanan also, like, we don't have to worry about Steadfast coming down and like one-shotting a Kanan. But Sabine yellow can definitely push way more damage out of hand than the green Sabine can. So, like, it's just a burn deck. Like,
Millennium Falcon, Surprise Strike. It's just,
and I think that's
sneak attack.
that's what I mean. You need to think about. I mean, it's trying to basically bang you out up in the space arena. I mean, if it's yellow, so just don't resource anything that can take care of that. I talked about. I mean, you guys don't have entrenched. I'm looking to entrench a space unit if possible. I'm looking there, and just don't let them have anything. They can't surprise strike something.
Don't entrench a Falcon, but
No, don't. I don't ever entrench their units on aggro. I mean,
I'll be honest. The card I want them to play the most on turn 2 is Millennium Falcon because it means they are not playing a 4-drop on turn 3. And I think that's fine. I'll take the 6 that Falcon is going to offer me. I'll figure it out later. Like, it makes their flip turn weaker.
And once you get to force throw, it's going to take care of itself. I mean, once you can actually have you can start using all that. That takes care of space as well. I think I often will keep open fire for the Falcon as opposed to the other things.
Oh, for sure. But don't do it the turn they play the Falcon. Do it after they pay for the Falcon, right? So it's. I think Falcon is a scary card, but not so much early. It's the card I'm scared of them playing later and like just pushing damage out of nowhere. I kind of like it eating up their resources early game. Like I would, if I have like choices, like I would rather just kill something else often and just take the 3 from that. It does the same amount of damage as A-Wing, but it also costs them a resource every turn to keep in play. So why not just kill the A-Wing? Let the Falcon drain their resources.
Completely fair.
Any other tips for Boba, or excuse me, Sabine yellow?
You just got to be wary of, like, their 4 causes are weaker because they run a lot of like monocolored cards. They don't have as much terrorism, and at a certain point in the game, you have to start pushing damage. Right when you've got control of the board, because if you wait too long, eventually they're going to draw a Falcon and surprise strike. Because they're going to sit on those surprise strikes.
I've heard that called turning the corner. Before in CCGs, which actually I think is something Woo does very, very well. Is just think about what their lethal is, and what you need. Sabine yellow's typically going to be on a 30 base. I think that.
Oh yeah.
You might turn a little.
You're never racing a yellow Sabine.
But I mean,
just keep in the back of your mind that you could take 9 out of nowhere because of like a sneak attack K2 heroic strike. Like, you need to be like if you have the choice between like, all right, I could like play this Obi or I can vigilance heal kill nothing. Well, Obi's a bad example. He's great against the heroic strike plan. Some other card that doesn't do anything that like maybe helps you next turn, but like, and then you're just like they have 4 resources and kill you, right? Like you need to be in the back of your mind thinking like no buffer is safe enough against them.
Unless you're at 0.
I think it. No, I think that's exactly. I was going to bring this up with Boba Yellow, which is the other deck this applies to next. I mean, your buffer needs to be bigger than against Sabine Green. Sabine Green, once her ECL is used, a 5 hit point buffer is probably enough if you're late game
Oh, yeah.
and she doesn't have units out. Against Sabine Yellow, it is not. And against Boba Yellow, it is not. When we talk about that matchup, Boba Yellow, I feel like this deck does well into. I mean, but there's some cards that are dead. Obi's dead. We've talked about that quite a few times today.
Yeah, never play Obi. Never, ever, ever. Do not play Obi into Boba Cunning. Unless it's literally, like, I don't know, you're somehow 9 resources in, you're just playing it to get something out there. That's fine, but never play it resource 6. You're more than likely going to shoot yourself in the foot.
All right. So what is your game plan, Woo, against a Boba Yellow? What are you trying to do?
I'm playing defense. They're an aggro deck. Pretty straightforward aggro deck. There's a few different things I do against them than I would against Sabine, right? I think Bodhi Rook is a problem that you need to be kind of aware of. If your hand allows you to resource your events and upgrades early, so that you don't get blown out by a turn 2 Bodhi, I think that's okay. Like, this is the one matchup where I tell you it's okay to resource Force Throw and Jedi Lightsaber, because it's better for it to be a resource than in your discard pile. Past that, it's defense. I think our flip turn matches theirs pretty well because we're flipping at the same time. Chirrut does decently in those situations. But they, this is tough because they have cards in their deck that are really good against us. No Good to Me Dead, which this deck plays 3 of, whereas like the Boba Green usually does not, is a problem sometimes. Cunning is a brutal card in general. I think our 4 drops are worse in this matchup than against most because of Cunning and Cantina Bouncer, right? Like, Kanan is not as good in this matchup as he is in other matchups. Baze, not as good. K2, which I don't think is particularly good into any Boba, but even worse here than into Boba Green. You want to play leaner, cheaper units, and Force Throw, still your best friend. Gearing up Chirrut and hoping that they don't No Good to Me Dead in for like 2 straight turns or something is important.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, move away from the upgrades. I mean, I think that's probably the one where I'm possibly resourcing a Force Throw. I'm also, watching their hand against Boba Yellow. I've had good luck with Boba. If they're playing out 2 things around their flip turns, I mean, a lot of times they'll have 1 card in their hand left while they have 5 resources out. I can tell you that card's either Cunning or Fire Spray. So you might want to.
They dump their hand more than the other Boba deck. Their hand tends to be thinner. So they do not have that much beef, and like they usually have to keep that beef for their 5 resource turn and their 6 resource turn. Force Throw hits them pretty hard.
And you'll always be against Boba Yellow. You'll always be flipping Chirrut the same turn that they're doing it. So it usually is a Force Throw for with the ability up because you have Chirrut up that turn. But I mean, even if the only thing they have out has a shield, I mean, I don't care if what I got was the best card that they have that's going to win them the game. All right. What about the
and Target Town is important here too, because they don't get a base, so like you do get a clean kill on a boss when it's needed, or like paired with an open fire can kill a fire spray.
Right.
Target Town helps a lot here.
Yeah, no, a lot of times I'm actually a little bit hesitant to use the Tarkin Town in the ground arena if I don't need it, just because I might against a fire spray, because it's fairly common that, I mean, my answer to fire spray ends up being a Force Throw plus a Tarkin Town, choosing them, because now I got the hand, for it.
I will say, if you have the option between playing A-Wing or Sabine unit's kind of goated into Boba Yellow. Kills Greedo cleanly, kills Crafty Smuggler. It's a good card against.
Especially on the play. It's like on the draw, you figure it out. But
Right. All right, let's talk about Boba ECL. I don't think this is a favored matchup for us. If one of you guys actually has it figured out that way, I think it's one of the
I think it's like 45, 55.
All right.
Mainly.
So what's the game plan that you do, Tillin, against Boba ECL?
Man. So if possible, I'll try and play to space first. So if their hand, if they don't have resupply, they can't, if all they have is super laser techs, they can't ECL their super laser tech into something. and hit that Boba flip turn 1 turn early. So a lot of the times I'll just like, play A-Wing, Wing Leader, and if they're not able to ramp, we're both flipping at the same time. Their flip turn doesn't feel as bad, which helps a lot. But I mean, if they play Crafty Smuggler, you play Sabine, they claim, you kill, the ECL Super Laser Tech or something. It feels kind of bad because now they're on your forward resource. They're hitting 5, and then they're just 1 turn. It's just.
Well, I don't even think they need
brutal.
to ECL Super Laser Tech. If they have a unit, they're just going to attack with it first action.
Yeah.
I think usually they're saving that ECL for that steadfast or like a 7th fleet to kill your A-Wing for free and like.
Yeah. It's hard. They have a lot of answers. Overwhelming Barrage is brutal. That card sucked. God, I hate that card.
Yeah, no, I think it's
good though.
I think it's right. Put some pressure on. Try to lane dodge. I mean, a lot of times I feel with Boba Green, Baze is better. And I'm trying to have that be the first ground unit I play.
Yeah, Baze I think is an important card, but you don't actually want him really getting Super Laser Tech. Like I think yes, if you can go the full space, but like you have to play to the ground. Like like your 4 resource turn almost always is a ground unit because we don't really have anything else. So at that point, if you play a Kanan or a Baze, and now that Super Laser Tech gets to put 2 damage into it, it makes their follow up. Like now Boss cleanly kills both of those things. So I think you want to usually just like get the Super Laser Tech damage onto like a Yoda or a Sabine or something, if you can. Like now if you can go like the hardcore space, like Restored Arc Wing Leader into like
double A-Wing,
or if you have like a takedown and they went like Boba, so then you just like stay in the air and like you've killed their Boba unit with your takedown, and now you've evened the scale, right? Because now they haven't been able to ramp. But in some situations, I think you just have to be like, let them have it. Like I don't know, like how I think you might set yourself up if you try to dodge too much, and then just they'll just delete your entire space with a 1 barrage anyway. So,
right. All right,
it's brutal.
What about Villain Blue Green? I mean, I think this is another deck that I mean we can win, but I don't know that it's necessarily favored. This can be Palpatine, Krennic. I mean, but what are we trying to do with that deck?
Well, like Krennic Iden, you can play pretty aggressive, right? Force their other hand a lot of the time, because they have a lot of cheaper stuff, so they're going to spend, they might Death Trooper play like an Inferno 4 along with their Krennic flip or something. They're not usually going to be Overwhelming Barrage. Iden, she's usually going to chill back and just like heal, and they run like Vader, Cargo Juggernaut, stuff like that. Just mainly, if you can discard their hand, go that route. Post sideboard, I'm bringing in like 2 Force Surrender, maybe not all 3, because like usually just playing 1 against them's enough, and then ideally like Vanquishes, maybe an extra K2. Just try and play like really low to the ground stuff. Mess their hand up.
All right, well, you play these decks a lot too. I know you're a very good Pelp player, and Iden before that.
Yeah, I do. I like them. I think they're good. They're tough matchups. But like I kind of always say with Chirrut, is like I don't say they're unfavored. I don't say they're favored. Chirrut's just kind of like in the middle there. The discard plan works well against them, and you want to go aggro. It's you're the aggro and you're playing discard cards. I think here Force Throw, you do want force units. Like these decks do, like these blue-green decks play units.
Right.
Like you need to kill their units. You need to kill their leaders. Their leaders are restoring things. Like they are actual threats. They play actual units.
They can kill you by like resource 8 if you don't do anything.
So yeah, you need, like, this is also, there's like the cat and mouse game with Takedown. I know I hear a lot of like Takedown counters Chirrut. Takedown is not carrying or Chirrut. You just have to like play around Takedown. But again, your early first 3 turns should usually be unit into like a fleet lieutenant or wing leader, into a K2 or Kanan, And in every one of those situations, if they want to sit there with 5 resources on their 5 resource turn and let you just play a bunch of shit, sorry, excuse my mouth.
You're good.
You're like mostly okay with that. Like you don't need to deploy your turret if they're just not going to play any cards. But they're going to have to play cards. They have to answer your threats.
Eventually, they'll play something. You flip Chirrut, buff them up. Now he's out of takedown range. Now they're in trouble.
And sometimes you need to flip, and then if they take an action and you can't buff him this turn, you might not even attack with Chirrut. You'll claim so that you can buff him first action following turn.
And sometimes it's okay if your turret gets taken down. I mean, if you have if you have a cannon out, and then you force throw to clear their board, and they just have 4, out there. I mean, first off, you can just claim when they pass if you can get her to pass, and now she can do the heal to no effect thing to stall once.
Oh, and your takedown is very good against Iden too. So.
Yeah, there's that.
A lot of the times, if they take down Chirrut like the following turn, they just wasted their whole 6 resource turn to get with Chirrut.
And then you get
you get them with a
Obi-Wan
K2
or
cannon.
Something.
Yep.
Right.
Now you're just pushing damage.
Vader, which blocks their Vader the following turn.
But I've had games like that against Villain Blue Green where I mean literally they were holding back takedown, all the way up to 7 resources, and I won the game because I had a board, and they kept letting me attack, and everything else, and playing like nothing, maybe an Inferno 4 one round. I mean, it's not enough, and you're whittling away their 25 hit point base, and by the time they
K2 is one of the best cards too in this matchup.
Absolutely.
A lot of the times I'm dealing 3 in these sort of matchups.
I would say that K2 is best in this matchup, and Wing Leader. K2 and Wing Leader are your all-stars typically against Villain Blue Green. I mean, they play a lot of Death Troopers. Death Trooper leaves himself with 1 health. I mean, if you can, jam a K2.
Most of the time I'm Tarkin Towning that. Or if they you can be really aggressive. If we play A-Wing, they play Inferno 4. They hit your A-Wing, you can just Tarkin Town it. I do that a lot of the times if you want to be really aggressive.
Yep.
Now you have a 3-1 in the air. Play Yoda.
Now, Palpatine, I mean, if that's the matchup, I think that's actually the hardest of these.
Yes.
Palp,
I will say, is favored into Chirrut. I don't often say it, but Palp is kind of a nightmare sometimes.
It's just the fact that they can draw cards to protect their hand. Protect their more important cards in the matchup. There'll be times where I will
Sentinel.
Yeah. That's hard to deal with. I'll Sabine ping a super laser tech instead of letting them sack it. So just so they don't draw a card.
Yeah. No,
Binds is a card you kind of really want to think about a lot in this matchup because the Palp steal, right? Often the way they set that, you can try to bait out like an Obi or a Luke, have them throw something at it, heal it up, and then maybe dodge a Palp flip for a turn.
Yeah.
If you're able to dodge a Palp flip for a turn, that sometimes can be the difference. But it's tough. I mean, he's usually going to take something good, and they still have all the answers that do kill Chirrut, like the power of the dark side, the takedown.
Yeah, I mean,
they play Vader. Vaders are tough. 3/5 Sentinels are a nightmare. It's not not
keeping duplicate unique is pretty good against this matchup as well. If you have 2 K2s, maybe don't resource one, and when you're damaged K2, you can just play your undamaged one, defeat the damaged one, make them discard or heal, or discard or deal 3.
Don't resource binds against Palp. I mean, it's one of your best cards against
it's a good card.
I mean, it may not do it there. I mean, ideally, you can kind of streamline things so that you have a really big turret and a Wing Leader or something else, because you need something else out at all time because he's going to power dark side you. But
if it's double green Palp, you can just make a big turret. Forces with me, it's got a shield on it.
And double green Palp, I wouldn't be that scared of because they don't have any of those removable, right? So
yeah.
It's
double green Palp, you just make big turret. Go crazy.
A big turret.
Right. All right. Luke Green and Han Green. Kind of hero mid-range. I mean, what are we trying to do? I think Han's more aggressive than Luke is, but...
For sure.
I actually think those matchups play pretty differently, even though they are in a mid-range bucket.
All right, let's talk about Han first. I mean, fair enough.
Han Green... They have some of the nuttiest flip turns, so if we're able to deal with that with either a force throw, discard Obi or Luke. I think that's very important. Or if they have one card in hand, you know, if they're very aggressive with their flip, like with their activating their ability and stuff. It's very important. Like you can hand shred them to a certain extent to where it makes them bad. And if you're able to deal with Han and like he's on 6, a lot of the times, okay, he just claims, you know, he just wasted his whole turn. And now you have a buff turret plus you play something else. Now he's going into resource 6 and you know, you're looking pretty good. But Han Red, it can be pretty rough because
Han Red's going to do our own trick against us. They're going to try to destroy the hand.
Yeah,
you know. So, I mean,
they can run. I mean, they just have so much stuff where like you play Sabine, they'll play an Ezra. You know.
Though I had
you can't do it like.
And I had a Han Red deck built myself. I've played actually a fair amount of it. I mean, I don't feel bad about Chirrut's odds there. I mean, just
like
you got to understand.
Open Fire is really good against that matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my favorite card.
Sure, it's pretty good into Han in general. Open Fire is great against their like best 3 drops. They tend to rip their own hand apart a little bit, so like we can finish the job. And we have a lot of things that one-shot Han. Like Chirrut often will come out before. If you get a lightsaber on him, you just hold Han hostage. Your 4-power unit with Forces with Me can defeat Han in one shot. The scariest Han stuff is when they resupply and like get big earlier than you, and like drop things like viewing into home 1 before you're able to like really take off. But they don't have clean answers to Chirrut in that deck at all. Like there's nothing really that
or Luke.
Yeah, and watch out your Yodas too, because Echo Based Defender is a problem. I mean, those are the 2 decks that run it.
And they play Traitorous too. So Yoda
play
is
Traitorous a lot.
So yeah, like that's something you need to think about.
All right, what about Luke Green?
Luke Green's rough. Probably one of the harder matchups. It's mainly that shield. You know, if they like turn 1 Alliance Dispatcher and we can't deal with it, like with a Unit Sabine or something, they Alliance Dispatcher and Echo Base give it a shield. We're in big trouble because that 4/3 shield answers pretty much everything, and it protects the Alliance Dispatcher. And now they're going to Alliance Dispatcher Kanan. They're going to do Obi a turn early. You know, flip Luke's lightsaber on Luke. You know, it's very hard to keep up with a Luke that has Alliance Dispatchered out in Echo Base. And it all stems from the Echo Base.
Yeah, these games tend to go real long for me with Luke Green.
Because the U-Wing plus Home 1, there's a lot of back and forth.
It does not feel good. I think they're pretty heavily favored, if I'm being honest. It's just their early game list lines up. Like we need to be aggro, but it's tough. They play Sentinels, they play shielded units, they play restore units. Their units they play a lot of the same units, so it's
they have Bright Hope. Some even run Mon Mothma.
Obi, like what do we do against Obi? Like there's just like nothing that cleanly defeats it. Like you have to force throw it sometimes, but then it buffs something, and like once an Obi gets a shield on it, like I don't know, like you just it's a tough one.
I mean, I think you got to draw force throw. I think you got to get it in the window before he shields.
Yeah,
I mean
you have to force throw yourself, kill Luke as soon as he flips it. Right. That I will not tap out if I have force throw in hand against a Luke. I will keep that 1 resource open for Luke.
All right, villain Green Red, Vader. Palp Red is actually pretty good too. It's very similar to Vader Green. Yep. I feel that this one is another one that Vader is probably doing okay.
It's mainly the ramp, get big stuff, overwhelming barrage. You know, all the removal. They have really nice early gameplays, trade favorably. You know, they can ping off shields. You know,
they're able to push damage throughout the game too. So I know like Chirrut is the more aggressive deck between the 2, but part of the issue sometimes with beating the Vader deck is that they're able to kill you too quickly.
Right.
Like if they
like Ruthless Vader into Vader and like they've chipped damage, like they've got their 3/1s hit you twice, and then like they've pinged 3 times, and you're just like a turn away from dying. It's tough.
Like
I don't bring in the discard stuff in this matchup. You cannot play 6 to make them discard, you will instantly die because that's you. Like Vader's either already out or coming out, right? Like they are not a control deck. I try to say that a lot. Vader Green is not a control.
It's not.
It's just a big mid-range deck.
It's most similar to Chirrut than anything else. I mean, with a little bit slower. I mean, Chirrut's better into aggro than Vader is, absolutely. But Vader is bigger than Chirrut himself. I mean, if you can beat Vader Green, like Chirrut with the saber, one shots Vader.
Yeah,
leader. It does, yeah.
Force the redemptions probably.
They sometimes, if they double ramp, the Vader can come at the same turn as Chirrut, which is a big problem.
So as Vader, I'm prioritizing ramp, just trying to get on top of you. You know, there.
Yeah, because that's the thing about Chirrut is it's not like Sabine. If you try to double ramp against Sabine, you'll be dead on turn 4. Chirrut won't have you dead on turn 4. Vader can double ramp, play a big unit, have a barrage. It's just like
barrage just cleanly answers our board at that point.
But we have the tools too, right? Like we can one shot a Vader.
And I think your best bet is to focus on Chirrut. I mean, Vader does not have power of the dark side. I mean, he can not do it. So it's if you can get that to be a threat for the Vader and Vader units coming out, you know, I think it's there. And then just draw more force throws than they do if it's Vader force. And
K2 cannons are good here.
I've even had them where
mill their barrages with
barrage a block.
I did lose to a Chirrut in the finals of the last showdown against the guy that I beat like 9 times with my Chirrut deck. You know, that I terrorized. So shout out to you, Connor. But I mean, that came down to, you know, not having the barrages, not having the force throws when he did. You know, and he got a big ass Chirrut on me.
Yeah, that's mainly how we beat them too. If we can just get a big Chirrut and keep them shielded.
All right, hard control matchups, and here I think Vader Blue is the exact opposite. They're the force surrender is probably the, you know, magic bean. That likely.
So I have a lot of experience with this. Most game 1s, you'll probably lose. If you see the writing on the wall, you can probably just scoop, because you're going to need the time for games 2 and 3 to try and do the discard plan. But if you do high roll game 1, where you draw like 2 force throws and K2, you know, you can double force throw them, kill your K2, make them discard their super laser blast, and you're able to push enough damage before they're able to find an answer for your board. But games 2 and 3, your 3 force surrender, 3 K2s, 3 force throws, you mess their hand up. You know, if they deploy Vader, hopefully Chirrut's still out with the Jedi's lightsaber, answers them cleanly, and you just keep going face. You know, swing the biggest thing at face is what I do, and eventually they'll have it or they won't.
Entrench is an important card. That's why we try to play Fang fighters. Charlton is an important card. It's why I keep in open fires, because open fire plus Tarkin Town will kill a Charlton. We'd really have nothing else to do with Tarkin Town in that matchup, so you might as well capitalize on that. And like the sideboard plan is mostly the same as the blue-green, I think. Like it's not. It's basically the same cards, except Obi. Like Obi's not good in these matchups where he is pretty good into the blue-green control decks that played the Darth Vader unit. But he's not here, and that's like a difference in what you take out. But
I think the effectiveness of the plan. I mean, if it's one of these decks that has like 30 events and most of them are removal, I mean, it's blue Iden.
Eventually,
yellow.
Eventually, they're going to top deck 2 events that don't do anything to the current board, and then they're just sad, and you're hitting them for 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, it's dumping their hand. And it just works better. I mean, blue-green villain. An Iden might be able to hang in there with her units for a while, whereas a hard control deck, really doesn't have a lot of way to climb back in the game. All right, well, I think this is excellent. I mean, we spent a bunch of time going through everything, and I think this is literally everything you can know about Chirrut in set 1. Both of you guys are accomplished card players. What advice do you have for somebody going to an event? I mean, we have a couple of showdowns left, and then Gen Con's right around the corner as far as like a big major event. But what do you do actually to prepare and get ready?
Well, like we look at what's recently won any major tournament, because when Vader Blue won the 5K, I think there's a lot of Vader Blues that popped up, and when the Boba Blue won the 1K, a lot of Boba Blues popped up. So there's always going to be people who follow that, and always try and tailor your deck maybe a little towards that, you know, because I guarantee there's going to be some, oh, this one here, I'm going to play it here, you know, and then just get the reps in. If you're able to play, you know, 300-400 games with Chirrut and know all the lines that you can possibly do, you'll have an edge against someone who has not played against Chirrut. That is the one thing I like about Chirrut is there's a lot of people who are like, I don't even know what that leader does. Let me read that. And you can catch them off guard with a lot of stuff.
They're the ones that usually attack Chirrut with a bunch of things.
Yeah, fine with that.
It's like, oh, Chirrut put 14 into him instead of, like, you know, 14 into your base.
Yeah.
What does Force Throw do? I get that.
Yeah. Do you get to choose the target? Do you choose the target beforehand or after? You know.
Yeah, no, you're winning those matchups already. But I think the point on the meta, I mean, adjust your deck, adjust your things. I've changed this list significantly. I mean, the lack of Obi was 100% due to Boba yellow because that had just won, you know, the thing before. What about you? Getting ready for a big tournament? What are you doing, Will?
Yeah, I think that's important. And you have to also understand that, like, a lot of people, it depends on, like, how big, right? A 1K, a 5K, like, these are different things than, like, a local, because people that go to those will be much more, like, tuned into what's going on. Whereas at a smaller event, like, people are going to play what they have. And it's like you're going to meta game for some event, that some 5K, and you're going to, like, play against a bunch of random things that have nothing to do with it because it's what the people around you are playing. So you have to first understand where you're going and what kind of event you're targeting. If you're willing to jump decks, that's an option, right? Like, if you think it's a good weekend for a certain archetype. If you're playing Chirrut and, like, you're gonna play Chirrut, then you work on, like, your main deck sideboard and, like, what it is you're trying to target. And yeah, like, have fun. Like, it's right now there's nothing really serious going on right now in general. It's still a learning phase for a lot of people. There's a lot of new players playing right now, and a lot of data from big events, but is clouded, right? So, like, you have to, like, make your best read, and you can't, like, dig too much into, like, what you think is going to happen or what you think. Like, in my experience, this matchup is good against this one. Well, that could be complete opposite of someone else's experience. So can't both be right, but we don't yet know who's right. So,
and you might take Chirrut, right? And they got the perfect cut where all 3 force throws are on the bottom of the deck with a long 3 loots. It's happened to me a couple of times. It happens. You just gotta take it on the chin. Go next, you know. You
can also just draw dead. I've had both redemptions.
Yeah.
A Luke, and, like, I had a hand where I didn't get to play against Sabine until turn 3, and it's the same cards as anywhere. I mean, that kind of stuff will happen. Just don't get tilted about it. I mean, hopefully it's a best of 3 and you can come back.
Yeah. I know Loopy here played this deck as a best of 1 at a best of 1 tournament. I don't think I would ever queue this deck up in a best of 1 tournament. I think its sideboard plan is so, like, it is very polarized deck, right? We talk so much about, like, what's good against Boba and Sabine and, like, what's good against, like, control decks. It's very different. And I think, you know, it's tough, right? If you're gonna play against control decks, like, you really you need that entire discard pack.
I didn't know he was going to drive up from Milwaukee. I thought I had a read on that meta. I thought I'd get one.
But even you put a Force Surrender in your main deck, like. And that's kind of
there was a Force Surrender there, but
I don't think it's the best of 1 deck. I don't. It very much relies on the 60 cards, not so much the 50 cards.
Yeah, agree.
But all right. So, and then try to get the games. I mean, I know that you play test a lot with the KTOG guys. I mean, that's a great Discord for competitive people. There's other options. If you don't have, I mean, go to your locals. But then try to look at online stuff. I mean, I think Woo's videos are about as good as it gets as far as, like, competitive content and analysis. But, I mean, you got to then apply that to the game and kind of understand it yourself. All right.
And play with the decks you're trying to beat. Play with them, because you'll kind of, like, learn what their tension points are.
Yep. And play your bad matchups, too. I mean...
Oh, yeah.
You can run something that you're very favored in much, but you're already going to win that. You got to try to win the hard
like,
ones.
if you're up against a Boba Green and you know what you have to do to win, but they don't know what they have to do to win, you're probably more likely to win that than they are, because they don't know what to do against Chirrut.
You guys excited for set 2?
Not particularly for Chirrut.
So
Not yet, right? It hasn't gotten much, but
We'll see.
yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I think Rivals Fall, which is a card that kills leaders, I mean, is interesting. I don't know how many decks will run it, but that card being widespread is not good for the Chirrut game plan.
Yeah, it fills a hole for 6-drop removal decks.
But
the thing is, like, I just don't like. I play Vanquish. I play these control decks. I usually have Vanquish in them. It's just gonna be Rivals Fall most likely now. Like the difference between 5 and 6. Like, I'm not using Vanquish to beat early game stuff. So like, it's not. I think it's generally just gonna be an upgrade there.
Yep.
right.
Which hurts. It
But-
hurts.
And I think, I mean, Chirrut himself, I mean, I think it's a good deck. I think Hero Blue Red will always be a strong deck with this kind of Force Throw Arc tech. I mean, it may be that we get a better
Yep.
leader, may not. But I mean, I do think it's an exceptionally fun deck to pilot. I don't think that you're out of any match. And any final, let's land this plane. You want to bring us home with any final words of wisdom, Dylan?
It's a fun deck. Nothing beats the feeling of force throwing them, and then watch as they discard their Avenger, and then you deal 9 to Vader. That feels great. When you get that, you're living.
Bring us home, Will.
Yeah, I mean, sure it's been like one of the most fun decks. Like, I think Force Throw's such a cool card. Sure, it's the key. Having a cheap Force leader that doesn't die. It's like it puts the whole Force package in play, and just keep your eyes peeled for more Force units and more Force payoffs, because this is where I'd be looking to capitalize on them.
And this deck is gaining steam. I mean, if you look at the representations, I mean, it's popping up more and more and more. So join the Chirrut train, folks. All right. Thanks, both of you,
It's
for
good fun.
sharing your knowledge. I think that we really hit everything here. And check out the rest of the series. Later.